Before I lose any of you to a YouTube short with a girl in it, I wanted to quickly share a tip not known to many that you might find super useful. Normally I don't play around with the language options, but this small indie studio actually fully translated the game into 18 languages. So if you are learning a new language, or you are trying to learn some old words in your own goddamn mother tongue like me, check out the language settings. And let me tell you, they translated everything. All the profession buildings and even the made-up town names. Hi, I'm Two-Siders. In this video I will convince you to play my favorite game of the decade, Against the Storm. The tips are separated into these 4 difficulty sections. This video contains the beginner section, where I will show you the ropes as to how to play the game, even if this is your first time playing a city builder. The beginner section was meticulously written to be as understandable as possible, where each tip builds on top of the previous one, so try to pay attention if you can and rewind the video if necessary. If you already know how to play Against the Storm, you can watch the second part of this video with the more advanced and random tips, but there might be some useful tips in this video you don't want to miss. I have worked around 50 hours on this video. Press the like button if you did, comment Frogman so YouTube will send the video to more beginners who need it, and press the subscribe button to not get service buildings in the first year picks. Finally, I have a separate Two-Siders Against the Storm YouTube channel where I upload unedited games. Most recently, we reforged the Platinum Seal and it only took about 2.5 hours. Check it out if you want something to fall asleep to. If you are only interested in a specific topic, you can use this Reddit post to quickly navigate in the video. By Ctrl F searching, for instance, Blightrot, you can see it's tips 54 to 58. Before I teach you how to manage settlements, it's important for you to know how you can win or potentially lose your settlements first. Explaining the basic game mechanics is easier if I tell you the story first. This is a fantasy world with many races, where every couple of decades the Blight Storm wipes out almost everything. When this happens, everyone hurries back to the smoldering city capital, which has a massive tongue of flame that protects civilization as we know it. To weaken the storm, magical seals must be reforged, but we have to get to them first. Multiple settlements must be established on the way to the seals. As a viceroy, it is your job to establish these settlements. Achieving victory for each colony is simple in principle, but not so in execution. To put it simply, winning a settlement is about building its reputation. You need to make sure your queen, the Scourged Queen, is satisfied with the settlement. She might be just, but she's also very impatient. You will lose a settlement if the queen's impatience runs out. But what does this mean in more concrete terms? Against the Storm is a lot like a board game. It's easier to understand what I'm talking about if you think of it as one. To win each settlement, you need to gain 10 or more reputation points. You will lose if the queen's impatience bar fills completely up. These are represented by the colors blue and red. Reputation and impatience can increase passively over time or suddenly in big chunks. I call these the passive or active ways to generate reputation or impatience. Building your settlement's reputation proves to your queen that the settlement is strong and successful, so each full reputation point reduces the queen's impatience by the same amount. There is no way to decrease reputation, by the way. Impatience mainly fills up passively over time, a ticking time bomb to win as early as possible. The other negative force in the game, also represented by red, is the hostility of the forest itself. Nature does not want us here. Interestingly, higher levels of hostility reduce the impatience generation, which makes the gameplay shift as time goes on. This is why in the early game, impatience generates much faster. It's all very long and complicated, so we'll talk more about hostility and active impatience generation later. Just know that hostility will generally increase as time goes on. The active ways to increase reputation are work orders and glade events. Work orders are mini quests from the queen to either deliver resources, explore new territory, or satisfy villagers, and these work orders award 1 reputation point. Glade events are various RPG events like fighting enemies, performing rituals to the forest, or sending back resources to the capital. These award various amounts of reputation. The passive way to generate reputation over time is all about satisfying the villagers of your settlement by providing them with work, food, housing, and services such as religion or education. Each species has a green circle of satisfaction around their portraits, called resolve. Once you satisfy a species enough, the resolve bar will turn blue, which indicates that the race is passively generating reputation over time. To win every settlement, you will need to do a bit of everything to build up enough reputation points. Deliver some work orders, do some glade events, satisfy 1 or 2 species for a while. Now that you know how to win, let's start our first imaginary settlement. I just got a settlement in the Royal Woodlands biome with humans, beavers, and lizards. Your biggest power in the game is the space bar. You can pause the game anytime you are making hard decisions. Or, if you are a min-maxing bitch like me, you can press it literally every time anything ever happens. The first rule is keep the hearth burning. If it goes out, global resolve will drop by like 20 points and your villagers will start leaving if resolve drops to a 0 or below. You automatically have a random firekeeper villager assigned, so you just have to make sure to gather enough fuel for the fire, like wood. Depending on which race you assign as a firekeeper at the main hearth, you get a different buff. Start collecting the resources around you, especially food and wood. Check out the build menu for gathering camps. The woodcutting camp is straightforward, but there are 4 different food camps. You started with 1 food node in your glade, and it can be a bit confusing to know which camp is required to gather it. You can hover over the resource to check the camp needed, or start clicking on the food camps one by one. The food will be highlighted with the one you need. You will need at least 1 food gathering camp and 1 woodcutter camp for fuel and buildings, so assign your villagers to these camps. Species can have preferred work types, so for instance, always assign beavers at the woodcutter camp or lizards at the trapper camp if you can. The moving wheel icon indicates the species is more efficient at performing that work, making it faster, and the blue glow indicates the species is happier performing that work, meaning their resolve will increase. Villagers consume food periodically at the hearth, and starvation means their resolve will decrease. Any food can be consumed raw, except grain or spice herbs. All camps have a gathering range, and villagers assigned to these camps will automatically start gathering the specific nodes within that range. Also, you can press the F and G keys to highlight trees for the woodcutters to cut down first. I do not recommend cutting into new glades just yet. Any worker not assigned to a camp or building is a builder. They will automatically construct buildings you place down. Make sure to place down roads between the camps, the warehouse, and the hearth, which will increase villager movement speed. The basic roads are completely free. Gathering camps can be moved for free with the M shortcut, but either way, in this game, destroying any building with the V key refunds all of its components, so don't worry about placing something in the wrong location. This uncraftable component called parts is used to build gathering camps, so destroy unused camps if you need more parts. Make sure to build a couple basic houses for villagers, which can house free and cost only 10 wood. You can check the top left for homeless villagers and builders. Having a home is an easy way to increase resolve. Houses have to be in the orange range of the hearth, but otherwise they are just like decorations. You don't need to leave room for the door or anything like that. You should place the entrance of production and gathering buildings towards where the action is. So for instance, the entrance of woodcutter camps towards the tree line, or the entrance of production buildings towards the warehouse. Against the Storm provides you with 2 unusual game buffs: Cornerstones, which are powerful passive buffs, and Building Blueprints, which are just buildings you will be able to construct until the end of this settlement. You start each settlement with the basic shitty blueprints, though you unlock more starter blueprints over your Viceroy career. You have to choose between random building options, and of course there is a strategy to it all, but I don't want to confuse you just yet. So for now, pick food related cornerstones and buildings. For instance, I got the cannibalism cornerstone, which will give me meat in case anyone dares to leave or die. As for the buildings, I picked the large herbalist camp, the brewery, and the tavern. We'll talk more about large gathering camps and service buildings later. You will get a new cornerstone every year and new building blueprints for every blue dot on the reputation bar. Work orders and traders can also offer cornerstones and blueprints. You also got some work orders from the Queen. Open them and pick whichever seems easier to you. Timed orders might not be unlocked for you just yet. To construct most buildings, you will need planks, bricks, and fabric, PBF. The crude workstation you start with can also make these, though at the worst conversion rate. Conversion rate is represented by stars, not unlike the sections in this video series, all the way from an empty star to 3 full stars. If I don't get a good food blueprint option initially, or I already picked one, sometimes I like to start picking buildings that can create PBF at a better conversion rate. For instance, the lumber mill is the best for creating planks. It's a good idea to set limits on every single recipe crafting to avoid, for instance, crafting all of your wood into planks and accidentally making the hearth go out. Each year has 3 seasons, but the most important for you right now is the storm season. It is a small version of the blight storm when everyone's resolve dips by 4 for every hostility level. If a species resolve reaches 0 and the red circle runs out, one of them will leave. When a villager leaves or dies, impatience increases by 0.3. So it's important to keep the villagers happy to praise them for the storm season. Unless you get lucky like me and you get the cannibalism trait, in which case you can just eat the villagers. The beginning of every year, you will get new villagers when the newcomer menu pops up. Most of the times I pick the option with more villagers, but it's up to you. It's very important to pick the newcomers and the cornerstones as early as possible, really. Be anxious about food. Food is the most important objective in every settlement. Of course, there are other objectives like doing the work orders and glade events and providing services, but food is far more achievable and effective in the early game. Basic housing is obviously easier to achieve, but it's kind of a dump and forget about it thing. Whereas you need to make sure that A, you make enough raw food so you don't starve, and B, you start creating complex food as soon as possible. Complex food is any food that is produced, not gathered raw with a gathering camp. There are 2 reasons why you should produce complex food. 1, it takes less raw food to produce complex food, and 2, one or more of your species might prefer that specific food, which will increase their resolve if they eat it. When you first start playing against the storm, you will not start with a building blueprint that is able to produce complex food, which is why it's important to pick them in your initial offerings. You've probably already noticed that most recipes in this game have multiple components, and different ingredients can be used for these. PBF only has 1 component, but a varying number of ingredients. Pickled goods, complex food, for instance. For the first component, I can use mushrooms or eggs or other things, and for the second component, I can use any container like pottery or barrels. So I picked the brewery building because both my beavers and lizards prefer pickled goods, as evident by the blue coloring to their names in the tooltip. So if enough of them get to eat pickled goods, they might start generating reputation for me, remember? I didn't want to confuse you earlier, but there are different biomes in the game which contain different resources and unfortunately not always what you want. You can press escape anytime to check what resources the current biome has, which is much easier than taking a screenshot with your phone of the starter screen like I used to do. So checking what resources resources the current biome has is important, and this is why you shouldn't pick a smokehouse on a map where meat doesn't even exist, or pick the insect generation cornerstone when there are no insects to speak of. There are ways to get non-existent resources, like using farms or traders, but more on this later. For instance, in this Royal Woods settlement, I am very lucky because all 5 food ingredients for pickled goods are actually present on this map. I just need a way to create containers like pottery through another building. Each species has their own preferences in work, food, and services. To give you some examples, humans like farming, baked goods, and leaving rude comments on my YouTube channel. Beavers are like dwarves. They enjoy cutting wood, working machinery, beer, and education. Lizards are Viking samurais. They like hunting, eating meat, and fighting. There are also other races you will unlock later. Species have shared preferences, and you should focus on satisfying these first with every settlement. For instance, both humans and beavers like drinking, both beavers and lizards like pickled goods, and both lizards and humans like religion. Creating pickled goods in this settlement is awesome because both lizards and beavers prefer it. Coincidentally, the brewery is also the best place to craft ale at, which is something humans and beavers both enjoy as a service. Resource nodes only contain a certain number of charges, so now is the time to cut into the glades to access more resources. Accidentally cutting into glades when you are not ready can lose you the settlement, so you can turn on this option at the woodcutter to prevent automatically cutting into glades. Big glades with giant menacing skulls have more resources in them. However, cutting into them triggers a dangerous glade event, which will do something bad in like 12 minutes if you don't do anything. With glade events, there are 2 choices: the easier red evil option on the left and the generally more difficult good yellow option on the right. The evil option generally requires some fuel or food to burn or sacrifice, and you can pillage the building in return. The good option might require more complex late-game service items or tools to appease the evil forest through a ritual and get a long-term reward, for instance. In our settlement, we got the Termite Burrow Glade event, which will destroy all building materials in 12 minutes. Converting the burrow is, ironically enough, the only way to get insects consistently on this map, but I will destroy it instead to get +2 to clay gathering, essentially tripling our clay production. Well, what do you know, there are 2 convenient clay glades here for pottery. Riches of the earth, such as stone and clay, must be collected at the stonecutter camp. Note that the small stonecutter camp does not exist. Copper and coal veins, however, must be collected by placing a mine on top of the resource nodes with workers assigned at the building. There are 3 upgrade paths for the mine, each of them unlocking more resource charges deeper in the earth. Situated at the corners of the map are even more difficult glades called Forbidden Glades, with these bear skulls, and they have even more resources in them, but again, even more difficult glade events. You can also find small glade events without a timer or a negative consequence. Most of these are loot caches that you can send back to the capital if you can open them with tools. Tools are pretty difficult to craft and cost a lot of money. Other non-dangerous glade events include accepting new villagers or reconstructing ruined gathering or production buildings, so keep an eye out for the exclamation marks. I got lucky and found some fertile soil in the dangerous glade. Farm buildings use fertile soil to produce food every year. They are slower than the gathering camps, but they never run out. If you manage to get a farming blueprint like the small farm or plantation, you will need fertile soil around the farm to start producing the goods. Make sure to convert the fertile soil into farmland first. Villagers assigned at these farms will plant in the drizzle season and harvest in the clearance season. In the storm season, they will literally shine dirt, working the soil so next year they can double production. You can check how rare fertile soil is in your biome by pressing escape, but currently every biome has a decent amount of fertile soil, except funnily enough the marshland. If you don't like farming, gathering from large 2-star resource nodes is a powerful alternative. You do need to be very lucky to get the corresponding large blueprints, but large gathering camps not only gather faster than small camps, the large resource nodes offer several times higher resources than the small ones. Because the marshland biome has so few fertile soil in it, there are actually some really good gathering buffs to compensate for them, and each forbidden glade in the marshlands has these giant resource nodes that pretty much last forever. You should also construct a trading post to get a trader every year. At a 20% markup price, different traders will offer semi-random resources. You can trade with gold amber or various resources depending on the current trader. Traders also sell perks, which are production or villager related buffs, so less game changing than Cornerstones, and sometimes they even have building blueprints for sale. Very often you can only win with the help of traders because you need just one resource the map doesn't have, or you need something to complete this stupid dangerous glade event that you don't currently have. You should construct some decorations around your town in the vicinity of your hearth to increase the neighborhood level, which will grant you various settlement buffs. Initially, you'll only have level 1 unlocked, and you can reach it with 8 houses and 4 green decoration. If you need a tiny bit of push to go over a species resolve threshold, you can favor that species, which increases the resolve by 5. Be aware that it reduces the resolve of other species by the same amount, and it also has a cooldown. For every reputation point generated by a species resolve, the reputation threshold increases. For instance, our lizards only initially needed 16 resolve to reach the threshold, but now the threshold is at 22. You should construct additional small warehouses and hearths so your villagers don't need to travel too far with items or to rest. Hearths require wildfire essence to build, an even more coveted resource than parts. Finally, to bring our plan into fruition, we can start offering services to our villagers. We will need to create service items such as incense, ale or scrolls, and a corresponding service building. Service items can be difficult to craft, but you can also sometimes use them in positive glade events. We can assign some villagers at our settlement's tavern, who in turn can start offering services such as leisure for humans and beavers, using the ale we produced. Assigning the maximum number of villagers at a service building will also yield a certain passive bonus. We proved that our settlement is successful, and now we can return to the world map. You can continue playing this settlement just for fun, but you won't gain any rewards from it at this point. After completing a settlement, the time towards the next blight storm increases. We call this a cycle. Unlike making love, you are incentivized to finish as early as possible, because then you get more time to finish additional settlements in the given cycle and get more rewards. As a reward for finishing a settlement, you get Citadel resources and seal fragments. Reforging each seal requires you to be near it and have enough seal fragments. Finishing a cycle removes your fragments, which is why you should finish settlements fast and farm enough seal fragments before the end of the cycle. The 3 types of Citadel resources can be used to upgrade yourself. You will get food stockpiles for finishing every settlement. You might have noticed these world events on the map, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. You will get the latter 2 resources, machinery and artifacts, for finishing settlements near these world event modifiers. Each new Viceroy level unlocks buildings, cornerstones and Citadel upgrades. Doing achievements called deeds grant you extra XP and cosmetics. Each world event modifier has a deed tied to it, so you should knock out these achievements if you want to level fast. Use the search functionality in the Citadel to check which deed you did. Once you get close to a seal, you should start a settlement next to it to attempt to reforge it. On this special map, you will not win by reaching 10 reputation points. Instead, you must find the ancient seal in one of the glades and complete 4 difficult, almost work order-like mini-quests to reforge the seal. Reforging each new seal will require more seal fragments than the previous one. You can farm extra seal fragments by completing settlements near negative world modifiers, but the real way to increase your fragment gain is by playing on harder difficulties. Against the Storm has an organic game difficulty progression, where the only way to progress in the game is to get better at the game. Each difficulty setting has some sort of a consecutive penalty, like additional reputation points required to win, fewer map bonuses, or the storm season lasting longer. Veteran difficulty is a big turning point, because that's when water and blight rot mechanics come to light. Let's explore rain punk technology over the next few tips. It's constantly raining in this world, so we might as well make use of it. You will unlock rain engines in the Smoldering City. To put it simply, you can get item production bonuses using water. Unfortunately, you cannot automate buildings to not require villagers, but you can increase production speed, the chance for doubling yields, and worker resolve. Each building requires one of 3 types or colors of water to boost. Food production buildings might require green drizzle water, material production buildings blue stormy water, and anything in between yellow clearance water. You can collect water every season with the rain collector building operated by villagers, or find single color geysers in glades, which can even be automated with pipes and wildlife essences. Pay for pipes to hook up a single building, and in case you spend the last 30 minutes trying to drag this stupid knob UI, you just need to left or right click it. Just like when using water in an Eastern European apartment, an evil sediment will start building up in the pipes the more you use them. Blight rot. You can see the total corruption level in the bottom right. Over the next storm season, blight rot will start corrupting the hearth, but you only really need to worry about corruption above 100%, because that's when it can fully corrupt the hearth, which will kill 3 villagers. To burn blight rot, you have to construct these fire stations where the workers will start preparing wildfire and will burn the blight rot over the storm season when they blossom. The in-game encyclopedia contains all the information you'll ever need, so you will never have to use the greedy fandom wiki. It doesn't only contain all the buildings and recipes, but also information about species and even explanations for the game mechanics. Did I mention the entire thing is searchable? In case you aren't already impressed, you can find even more resources and guides on Hooded Horse's website. As for the UI, like I've mentioned, hovering over any item will tell you which buildings can create it, how well, and if you've already unlocked those blueprints or not. By pressing U, you can even check what you can craft from certain items, and shortcut O shows you the trends page, so now you know which production building ate all of your Glade event items. We'll talk more about these, the options menu and the shortcuts over the next video though. The final tip of the beginner section is don't be afraid to lose. Nothing negative happens when you lose, except you might need to redo a cycle if you couldn't farm enough seal fragments or fail to reforge the seal in time. You can always start a training settlement to try out certain game mechanics as well. Thank you so much for watching. Check out the next video for some more advanced and, dare I say, weird tips. Smash the like button, smash the fishman totem, smash the subscribe button, comment frogman, or just check out the secondary channel to laugh at me for posing too much. This has been Two Siders, eat the villagers.